Hey y'all! Well, we're here today to do a speaker cable review. And if you guys have been following my channel for very long, you know how I feel that a lot of this cable stuff is just snake oil. And I've listened to different cables, and in the past didn't hear anything, even though some people in the room were like, oh my god, those sound so great. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't hear nothing, but, I'm not going to bust somebody's bubble. They, got their $5,000 speaker cables and they're all excited about it, but I think there's money better spent in other areas. And so, yeah, let's talk about that. One of the things, too, in my system, here's my, speaker cables. They're 3 feet long. The way I have my system set up, speakers aren't very far from the amp, and so you're not going to have much loss. If you've got one of these setups where you have the speakers, 15, 20 feet apart for whatever reason, yeah, cables do need to be at least the right gauge. And up until now, what I've been using is just this Home Depot 12 gauge zip cord that they sell for low voltage lighting. And when I first was using this stuff, I was just like tinning the ends and just sticking them through the little, thumb nuts and tightening them down. Then I realized with some speakers that have those little, spade flat pieces that connect the biamp part, that if you don't internally solder them, that sometimes they don't get a really good connection. So on Amazon, I bought some of these. Again, me being a cheapo, I bought these little cheap banana plugs. And this is a little different one. I wanted some that I could kind of bend at a right angle to plug into the amp. And kind of nice to be able to just plug them in and out when I'm swapping amps and swapping speakers around and stuff. And so, been using these. Was over at my friend's house, and he had just bought some Blue Jeans cables. And I've heard of them before, and I know they're supposed to be pretty high quality, or very high quality made. And so I went and did a little research and looked at what they were selling. And one of the things that impressed me, and I got my little cheat sheet here, is they're the only vendor with ultrasonically welded speaker cables. Now that's a very cool thing, because then you're just welding the actual copper wire to the brass connector, just welded, where there's no solder, there's no crimp, there's no anything like that. And that's going to get a really good connection, and it's going to be really strong. The other thing I liked about these cables that he was showing me is they have locking banana plugs. And on a tube amp, it's obviously a bad thing if the speaker comes unplugged and you turn it up with music playing through it. It can fry the output transformer. So I like the idea of being able to, tighten these things up, and they lock the banana plug. When you tighten this up, there's a little T-bar here that goes up and spreads this out and locks it in and gets a really firm connection inside the speaker connector or the output jacks on the amplifier. So what really sold me on using their stuff is they talk about the speaker cables are different from interconnect cables because they're driven at low impedance. For all practical purposes, they're immune from EMI or RFI. And that's important, because it's low impedance and high current. You're not going to have any RFI or EMI, whatever, impacting these cables. So that's a hoax that you got to have some shielded speaker cables. And then the biggest issue with speaker cables from the point of sound quality is simply conductivity, which is what I've been saying. Guys, it's a freaking piece of wire, and you're running current through it, and especially if it's a longer run, the gauge needs to be high enough so that, or low enough number, high enough diameter, so that you don't have a voltage drop in them as you're running the current from the amp to the speaker. And then they go on to say, the lower the resistance of the cable, the lower the contribution of the speaker cable's resistance to the dampening factor, and the flatter the frequency response will be. Here's the part that I respect. While one can spend thousands of dollars on exotic speaker cables, in the end analysis, it's the sheer conductivity of the cable, and barring a really odd design which may introduce various undesirable effects, little else matters. And that's why I keep saying, if you get some super high-end speaker cables that are some weird flat cables or they're some other bizarro kind of design, and you hear a difference, that's because it's a bad cable and it's causing interference problems, and that's what you're hearing. It's not because it's a better cable. It's simply conductivity. That's all that matters. The only other thing that can cause problems is if the cable has high capacitance. And some of those flat, the cables where they flatten the wire out and then they put them up next to each other, you can end up with a big long capacitor in your speaker cables, and it can fry a tube amp if you start putting a bunch of capacitance into the cable, and it can make the amp oscillate and smoke all kinds of stuff. So that's your enemy, is high capacitance speaker cables. And then finally they add, the answer to keeping conductivity high is simple. The larger the wire, the lower the resistance, the higher the conductivity. So they sell various versions of this kind of just stranded, I think they go 10 and 12 gauge, using belted wire, which I'm sure is really nice stuff. And then they also have this Canare, C-A-N-A-R-E 4S11 cable. And this is a star quad 14 gauge cable. It's 4 conductors in a single jacket, and they connect them up in pairs, or you can have them done bi-amped, where you have either 4 connectors on each end, or 2 on one end and 4 on the other, and you special order them the way you want them. Now they do sell them on Amazon. I'll put a link below, but I wanted like these short 3-foot cables, and so I ordered them straight off their site. They don't do it in increments lower than a foot. They don't have like 2.5 feet or whatever, because if I could, I probably would have ordered, I maybe could have emailed them and got them to make me a 2.5 for one side and 3 foot for the other, but it's not a big deal. So, got a couple of 3-foot cables, and I really like these locking banana plugs. And here's what they look like up close, so you can kind of see what they're doing. And you just hold that gold part where the wires come out and twist the silver part, and it pushes that little T-slot thing down to expand the banana plug, and that locks it in place. They do say that the quad speaker cable can reduce the EM or electromagnetic field around the cable, which tend to diminish the effect of the signal of the speaker cable to nearby interconnects. Though this is not, in most applications, a significant concern. Mainly it says, hey, it's a good looking cable. This cable is not UL listed or NEC rated. They sell the cable raw, and you can get it terminated, which I got it terminated because I wanted the ultrasonic ends on it. So, got these cables in. They look really nice, and they definitely have higher quality ends than these cheap little Amazon ones I was using. And like I said, I like the fact they lock in place. So, how do they sound? Well, put on some music that I'm very familiar with. Listen to about 5 minutes or, whole song through. Swap the cables. They sound identical. So, yeah, are these a good value if you're a budget audiophile? Well, given the fact that I see people that are paying less for their amplifier than a pair of these speaker cables cost. Is it really that important? Probably not. But they look nice. And I like having nice looking stereo gear. And like I said, with these locking cables and these nice ultrasonically welded ends, I think it's a good deal. I think a pair of these cables was a little under $100 with shipping. Obviously, in the longer lengths, you're going to pay more. But guys, if you're going to buy some fancy speaker cables, go get some of these. And don't spend any more money than these cost. These are nice cables, and it's the same thing I've told you before on your interconnect cables. Just go buy some of those world's best cables on Amazon. They got Morigami wire, they've got Amphenol ends. I've taken the ends off of them to make custom length wires, and they're super well made. They have them made in standard with a single conductor that uses the shield for the ground or the return. And then they also have directional ones, which is the ones I like, where their shield is on one end and then the two wires, basically a microphone cable, it goes up to the other RCA jack so that the shield drain goes back to the source. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on cables, guys. And like I said, these Blue Jean cables, like that they're made in America, and like supporting companies that are based in, work or manufactured in America. So that's one reason to buy stuff from them. Like I said, they've got the ultrasonically welded ends, which is a bonus. You can either get them with these locking banana jacks, or banana plugs, or you can get them with different kinds of spade connectors. And I think the little small spade connectors that you would use like in an old, Dynaco amp or something, they're not ultrasonically welded. So you can find out more info on their site about that. So if you do use spade connectors, make sure that you get the right size. And spending any more than a pair of these is just a waste of your money. And that's just my personal opinion. I'm sure in the comments below, going to get some folks telling us how their $3,000 speaker cables transformed their system and gave it so much air that they had to raise the ceiling in the room because the speakers had so much air, or what. Anyway, yeah, that's probably what we're gonna get. So the comments might be enjoyable to read, and I think that's a great place to wrap up this video. So I hope you're enjoying my content. If you are, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Thanks to all you folks that subscribe and regularly watch my videos. I really appreciate all you guys. If you are interested in buying some speaker cables or some interconnects, you can use my Amazon affiliate links below. I don't know if I've said this recently. Amazon likes us to say this every once in a while. Yes, I do get a small percentage of the sale of this, but it doesn't add anything to your price. Same price to you, but they give me a little kick for, sending you all there. So either go to Amazon if they got the stock sizes that you want or need, or the type, and then if they don't, you can go to their website, which I'll also link below, and custom order whatever you want. And yeah, they're really nice cables, and they look a lot better than these Home Depot with these little cheapo ends I soldered on them. So, and maybe there is a little bit of psychological thing that, I think I hear a little more detail, but there's always that. So anyway, till the next video, y'all have a nice day.